Have you ever stood in a place that quietly changed the course of a nation without the world ever fully realizing it? Most travelers pass through Indonesia searching for famous beaches, towering volcanoes, or vibrant cities filled with endless lights. They chase destinations that dominate travel brochures and social media feeds. Yet hidden among the fertile plains of East Java lies a city that has witnessed the rise of kingdoms, the arrival of foreign armies, the struggle against colonial rule, and the birth of a nation's identity. That city is Blitar. At first glance, Blitar feels calm. Its streets move at an unhurried pace. The air carries the scent of rice fields and tropical trees. Local markets buzz with ordinary conversations, while families gather in parks as evening approaches. Nothing immediately suggests that this peaceful city has been a silent witness to some of the most defining moments in Indonesian history. But history has a remarkable way of hiding in plain sight. Every road, every monument, every ancient site in Blitar tells a story that reaches back hundreds of years. It is a place where myths blend with documented history, where forgotten heroes still inspire generations, and where the legacy of Indonesia's first president continues to shape national memory. Many people know Blitar only as the resting place of Sukarno, Indonesia's first president and one of the nation's founding fathers. While this alone makes the city historically significant, it represents only a small chapter of a much larger story. Long before Indonesia declared its independence in 1945, long before European colonial powers established their control over the archipelago, and even before the mighty Majapahit Empire reached its greatest heights, the lands surrounding present-day Blitar were already becoming part of remarkable historical events. This is not simply the story of one city. It is the story of courage against overwhelming odds. It is the story of identity forged through centuries of conflict and resilience. It is the story of how ordinary landscapes become extraordinary because of the people who once walked upon them. To truly understand Blitar, we must first travel back more than 700 years to a time when Southeast Asia stood at the crossroads of competing empires. During the late 13th century, the powerful Mongol Empire under Kublai Khan had become one of the largest empires in human history. Its influence stretched from Eastern Europe across Central Asia and into China. Few kingdoms dared resist its expansion. Among those who served under the Mongol Empire were troops commonly referred to in historical Indonesian sources as the Tartar forces. They became part of an expedition sent toward Java after diplomatic tensions arose between the Yuan dynasty and the kingdom of Singhasari. The conflict that followed would eventually reshape the political landscape of Java and contribute to the emergence of one of Southeast Asia's greatest empires, Majapahit. Although historians continue to debate many details surrounding these events, local traditions in Blitar preserve a fascinating legend connected to this period. According to these long-standing stories, after fierce battles erupted in Java, remnants of the foreign forces retreated into dense forests located in the southern regions of the island. Those forests would eventually become part of the land we now know as Blitar. Faced with this continuing threat, the Majapahit ruler entrusted a respected military commander named Nila Suwana, also remembered in local traditions as Gusti Sudomo, with an important mission. His task was simple in words, but dangerous in reality. Drive the remaining foreign troops out of the southern forests and secure the kingdom's future. Leading his warriors through difficult terrain covered by thick tropical forests, Nila Suwana confronted the remaining enemy forces. The mission demanded not only military strength, but also endurance, leadership, and intimate knowledge of the landscape. According to local legend, he succeeded. The remaining Tartar forces were finally pushed away from the region, allowing Majapahit to strengthen its authority over the area. As a reward for his loyalty and bravery, the king granted Nila Suwana authority over the southern territory where the battles had taken place. He later became known as Arya Blitar, the first ruler associated with the region. From this victory emerged one of Blitar's most enduring legends. Many local traditions explain that the name Blitar evolved from the phrase Bali Tartar, meaning the return of the Tartars, or the retreat of the Tartar forces. Modern historians acknowledge that this explanation belongs primarily to regional folklore rather than universally accepted historical fact. The precise linguistic origin of the city's name remains debated among scholars, with several competing theories proposed over the years. Yet legends often carry a different kind of truth. Whether every detail unfolded exactly as remembered is almost secondary to what the story represents. It speaks about courage. It honors those who defended their homeland. It reminds each generation that the identity of a place is shaped not only by official records, but also by the stories communities choose to preserve. Across Indonesia, many cities trace their beginnings to legends that blend myth and history together. These narratives become part of cultural identity, connecting modern residents with ancestors whose names may never appear in official chronicles, but whose influence survives through oral tradition. Blitar is no exception. As centuries passed, kingdoms rose and fell across Java. Majapahit flourished into one of Southeast Asia's most influential maritime powers before gradually declining. Islamic sultanates expanded across the archipelago. European traders arrived, initially seeking spices before transforming commercial ambitions into colonial domination. The world around Blitar changed dramatically. Empires disappeared, new governments emerged, trade routes shifted, religions spread, technologies advanced. But Blitar endured. Generation after generation continued cultivating fertile farmland, nourished by volcanic soil originating from nearby Mount Kalud. Communities built temples, established villages, preserved traditions, and adapted to changing political realities without losing their connection to the land itself. This remarkable resilience became one of Blitar's defining characteristics. Rather than seeking attention, the city quietly absorbed history. It became a place where the past remained visible, not through grand displays of power, but through ordinary lives lived upon extraordinary ground. Few could have imagined that centuries later, this same city would once again become deeply intertwined with one of the greatest turning points in Indonesia's national journey. Because Blitar was about to enter another chapter, one that would place it firmly at the heart of Indonesia's struggle, its identity, and its enduring legacy. As the centuries unfolded, the world entered an age unlike anything humanity had experienced before. European powers were racing across oceans in search of wealth, influence, and new territories. What began as commercial exploration gradually transformed into one of history's largest colonial expansions. Across Asia, Africa, and the Americas, local kingdoms found themselves confronting nations equipped with advanced naval technology, organized administrations, and relentless economic ambitions. The Indonesian archipelago, blessed with fertile land and rich natural resources, soon became one of the most valuable regions in this global contest. Java stood at the center of it all. Its strategic location, agricultural abundance, and growing population made it indispensable to colonial administration. Roads were expanded, railways were introduced, plantations spread across the countryside, and cities slowly evolved under a new political system designed to serve colonial interests. Blitar was no exception. Although it remained smaller than major colonial centers such as Batavia, Surabaya, or Semarang, its importance steadily increased throughout the 19th century. Positioned within one of East Java's most productive agricultural regions, Blitar developed into an important administrative and economic centre. Its fertile volcanic soil, enriched over thousands of years by repeated eruptions from Mount Kalud, supported rice cultivation, sugar plantations, coffee production, and numerous other agricultural activities that fueled both local livelihoods and colonial revenues. Nature itself had shaped Blitar's destiny. The volcanic landscape that occasionally brought destruction also delivered extraordinary fertility. Every eruption reminded local communities of nature's immense power. Yet every recovery demonstrated their resilience. Life in Blitar became a constant balance between opportunity and uncertainty. Farmers worked fields nourished by ancient volcanic minerals. Merchants transported crops through expanding trade networks. Families built homes, knowing that the mountain towering in the distance could one day awaken again. This relationship between people and nature forged a culture defined by perseverance. The people of Blitar learned that survival required patience. Prosperity demanded hard work, and every generation carried the responsibility of rebuilding when necessary. These qualities would later become invaluable during far greater challenges than volcanic eruptions. By the beginning of the 20th century, colonial authorities had begun reorganizing many urban centers throughout Java. Modern administrative systems were introduced to improve governance, taxation, infrastructure, sanitation, and public services. Municipal governments became increasingly important as Dutch colonial officials attempted to create more structured cities capable of supporting economic growth. For Blitar, one date would become permanently etched into its history: April 1st, 1906. On that day, the Dutch colonial government officially established Gemeente Blitar through Staatsblad van Nederlands-Indië, number 150 of 1906. The designation elevated Blitar into an officially recognized municipality within the colonial administrative framework. To many people today, this might sound like little more than a bureaucratic decision, but at the time it represented something much larger. Official municipal status meant greater investment in urban planning. Roads could be improved, government offices expanded, public facilities developed, commercial activity increased, educational institutions gradually grew. The city began transitioning from a regional settlement into a more organized urban community, capable of supporting a growing population. Walking through Blitar during those years would have revealed a fascinating blend of cultures and architectural influences. Traditional Javanese homes stood alongside colonial buildings. Horse-drawn carriages shared roads with bicycles. Markets echoed with conversations in Javanese, Dutch, Chinese dialects, and other local languages. Mosques called worshippers to prayer, while churches reflected the growing diversity introduced during the colonial era. The city became a meeting point between tradition and modernization. Yet beneath these visible developments lay an uncomfortable reality. Progress was never equally shared. The colonial system existed primarily to benefit the ruling administration rather than the indigenous population. Economic opportunities often favoured colonial interests. Political participation remained heavily restricted. Social hierarchies placed native Indonesians at significant disadvantages compared to Europeans. Many local communities experienced modernization without genuine freedom. Schools expanded, but educational access remained unequal. Infrastructure improved, yet political rights remained limited. Economic production increased, while much of the wealth flowed outward. This contradiction became increasingly apparent across Java. A new generation of educated Indonesians began asking difficult questions. Why should their own homeland remain under foreign rule? Why should decisions affecting millions of Indonesians continue to be made by distant colonial authorities? Why should a nation rich in culture, history, and human potential be denied the right to determine its own future? These questions gradually transformed into something far more powerful: national consciousness. Across the archipelago, newspapers circulated new ideas. Students debated political philosophy. Religious leaders encouraged social reform. Intellectuals discussed concepts of independence, equality, and self-determination. Organizations dedicated to education, culture, and political awareness emerged throughout the Dutch East Indies. Although Blitar was not always at the forefront of these national movements, the city became increasingly connected to the awakening taking place across Indonesia. Its schools educated young minds. Its communities absorbed new ideas. Its people witnessed firsthand both the benefits and limitations of colonial modernization. History was quietly preparing Blitar for an even greater role. During the late 1920s, the city briefly gained additional administrative importance when it served as the centre of the Blitar Residency. Although this status did not last for many years, it reflected the city's growing significance within East Java. Government administration expanded, public institutions became more established, regional influence increased. Even after administrative boundaries shifted again, Blitar continued developing as an important urban centre whose influence extended well beyond its relatively modest size. Then came one of the darkest chapters of the 20th century, the Second World War. In 1942, Japanese forces rapidly defeated Dutch colonial defences throughout the Indonesian archipelago. For many Indonesians, the arrival of Japan initially appeared to signal the end of centuries of European colonial domination. Some believed liberation had finally arrived. Reality proved far more complicated. The Japanese occupation introduced a different form of control. Resources were redirected toward the war effort. Forced labour programs affected countless communities. Food shortages became increasingly severe. Freedom remained elusive. Yet history often unfolds through unexpected consequences. During the occupation, Japan established military organizations composed of Indonesian volunteers. One of these organizations became known as PETA, the Defenders of the Homeland. Officially, PETA existed to strengthen Japanese defenses against potential Allied invasions. Unofficially, something much more important was happening. Thousands of young Indonesians were receiving military education, organizational experience, leadership training, and a growing sense of national unity. Many of the very skills intended to protect the Japanese occupation would later help Indonesians fight for their own independence. Among the cities connected to this remarkable transformation, Blitar would soon become one of the most unforgettable names in Indonesia's revolutionary history, because within its quiet streets, one courageous young commander was preparing to make a decision that would inspire generations, even though the outcome would remain shrouded in one of Indonesia's greatest historical mysteries. By early 1945, the Japanese Empire was beginning to crumble. Across the Pacific, Allied forces were advancing with unstoppable momentum. Cities that had once symbolized Japan's military strength were being bombed relentlessly. Supply lines were collapsing, resources were running dangerously low. The empire that had expanded across much of Asia was now fighting simply to survive. But while the tides of war were changing, life inside occupied Indonesia became increasingly difficult. Food grew scarce. Essential goods became harder to obtain. Families struggled to survive under strict military control. Fear had become part of everyday life. People were expected to obey without question. Speaking against the occupation could lead to severe punishment. Entire communities lived under constant surveillance, uncertain of what tomorrow might bring. Yet history has repeatedly shown that oppression often creates the very resistance it seeks to destroy. Among the young Indonesians serving in Blitar was a commander whose name would become forever linked with courage. His name was Supriyadi. Unlike many military leaders remembered only for battlefield victories, Supriyadi became a symbol because he chose to act when remaining silent would have been far safer. Born into a generation that had spent nearly its entire life under colonial rule, Supriyadi understood something many people were only beginning to realize. No foreign power would willingly hand Indonesia its freedom. Freedom would require sacrifice. It would demand courage from ordinary people willing to risk everything for a future they might never personally witness. As conditions deteriorated under Japanese occupation, reports of forced labor, mistreatment of civilians, and growing hardship reached Blitar members throughout East Java. Many soldiers had originally joined believing they were protecting their homeland. Instead, they increasingly found themselves serving an occupying force whose priorities had little to do with the welfare of the Indonesian people. The contradiction became impossible to ignore. For Supriyadi, loyalty to his nation outweighed loyalty to the military structure imposed by Japan. On the night of February 14, 1945, in Blitar, he made his decision. It was an act of extraordinary bravery. It was also an act that carried almost impossible odds. Together with fellow Blitar officers and soldiers, Supriyadi launched an armed rebellion against Japanese forces stationed in the city. Their objective extended beyond a simple military confrontation. They wanted to ignite the spirit of resistance. They wanted Indonesians to realize that foreign occupation was not invincible. They wanted to demonstrate that courage could exist even when victory seemed unlikely. The uprising began with determination. Blitar soldiers moved against Japanese positions, hoping their actions would inspire wider support. But the Japanese military responded swiftly. They possessed superior organization, communication, and resources. Within a short time, the rebellion was suppressed. Many participants were arrested, some faced execution, others endured imprisonment and interrogation. From a purely military perspective, the rebellion failed. Yet history is not measured only by immediate victories. Sometimes the greatest triumphs are those that inspire future generations. The Blitar rebellion became one of the earliest open military acts of resistance against Japanese occupation anywhere in Indonesia. It proved that the desire for independence had grown too strong to be contained. It revealed that Indonesian soldiers were no longer willing to fight merely as instruments of foreign powers. Most importantly, it demonstrated that the dream of an independent Indonesia already lived within the hearts of its people months before the proclamation of independence. This was no longer simply about changing rulers. It was about reclaiming dignity. It was about restoring the right of a nation to govern itself. It was about believing that Indonesia deserved to stand among the free nations of the world. And then came the greatest mystery of all. When Japanese forces crushed the rebellion, many participants were captured, but Supriyadi was not among them. He disappeared completely. No confirmed record has ever established exactly what happened after the uprising. Some believed he escaped into the forests surrounding East Java. Others claimed sympathetic villagers helped him hide. There were stories suggesting he secretly continued resistance activities under another identity. Some believed he had been killed, although no definitive evidence was ever produced. Others refused to believe he had died at all. The mystery endured. Years passed. The Second World War ended. On August 17, 1945, Sukarno and Muhammad Hatta proclaimed the independence of Indonesia. A new nation was born. Yet Supriyadi remained missing. Such was the respect he had earned that President Sukarno appointed him as Indonesia's first Minister of Defense. It was a remarkable gesture. A man who could not be found was entrusted with one of the highest positions in the newly established republic. Government officials waited. Days became weeks. Weeks became months. Supriyadi never appeared. Eventually, another minister assumed the role. But Supriyadi's appointment revealed something profoundly important. Indonesia had not forgotten him. His courage had already become larger than his physical presence. Even today, historians continue examining documents, testimonies, and archival records in hopes of solving the mystery. Many theories have emerged, none have been universally accepted. His disappearance remains one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in Indonesian history. Perhaps that uncertainty is part of why his legacy remains so powerful. People naturally remember stories that leave questions unanswered. Mysteries invite every generation to revisit history with fresh curiosity. In Blitar today, the memory of Supriyadi continues to live through monuments, schools, streets, and public spaces bearing his name. Children grow up learning about the young commander who dared challenge an occupying army despite overwhelming odds. Visitors pause before his monument, reflecting on a life that ended not with certainty, but with enduring questions. His story reminds us that heroism is not measured solely by success. Sometimes courage is choosing to stand for what is right, even when the outcome appears impossible. Sometimes the people who shape history are not those who live to celebrate victory. They are the ones who inspire others to continue the struggle after they are gone. For Blitar, the Peter Rebellion transformed the city into more than just another municipality in East Java. It became sacred ground in Indonesia's journey toward independence. The streets where ordinary citizens once lived became the setting for extraordinary courage. The city had already carried legends from the Majapahit era. Now it carried the memory of modern heroes. But history had one final gift waiting for Blitar, one that would forever connect the city with the man whose voice declared Indonesia's independence before the entire world. One leader, one vision, one resting place that would transform Blitar into one of the most important pilgrimage destinations in the history of the Republic of Indonesia. When Indonesia finally proclaimed its independence on August 17, 1945, the world witnessed the birth of a new nation. After centuries of colonial domination and years of unimaginable hardship during the Second World War, a single declaration changed the destiny of millions. Standing before his people in Jakarta, Sukarno delivered words that would echo through history. Those words marked the beginning of a republic built upon hope, sacrifice, and an unwavering belief that freedom belonged to every nation. For Indonesians, Sukarno became far more than the country's first president. He became the face of independence, a gifted orator, a visionary leader, a symbol of unity during one of the most turbulent periods in the nation's history. His speeches inspired confidence when the future appeared uncertain. His determination encouraged millions to believe that Indonesia could stand proudly among the nations of the world, despite the enormous challenges it faced. Although Sukarno spent much of his political life traveling across Indonesia and engaging with world leaders abroad, one city would eventually become inseparable from his legacy. That city was Blitar. Today, when Indonesians hear the name Blitar, many immediately think of one place above all others, the final resting place of Bung Karno. Nestled within a peaceful complex surrounded by trees, gardens, and traditional Javanese architecture, lies the grave of the man who proclaimed Indonesia's independence. Every year, hundreds of thousands of visitors make the journey to this site. Some arrive as tourists, others come as students, eager to understand history beyond the pages of textbooks. Many visit simply to pay their respects. Some stand silently before the tomb for only a few moments. Others remain much longer, reflecting on the extraordinary life of a man whose vision helped shape an entire nation. The atmosphere is unlike that of an ordinary historical attraction. There is a quiet dignity that fills the complex. Visitors lower their voices. Families walk respectfully through the pathways. Teachers explain the significance of Indonesia's struggle for independence, while children listen carefully, often imagining a time when freedom was still only a dream. The site has become more than a burial place. It is a classroom without walls, a place where history feels alive. Adjacent to the tomb are the Bung Karno Museum and the Bung Karno Library, institutions dedicated to preserving the thoughts, achievements and legacy of Indonesia's founding president. Inside, visitors can explore photographs, personal belongings, historical documents, speeches, and countless records that illustrate Sukarno's remarkable journey. Each artifact tells part of a larger story, a story of imprisonment, exile, political struggle, diplomatic triumphs, national leadership, and ultimately, an enduring legacy that continues to influence Indonesia today. For younger generations, these collections provide something invaluable: perspective. It is easy to take independence for granted when one has never experienced life without it. But walking through these exhibits reminds visitors that every freedom enjoyed today was earned through extraordinary sacrifice by countless individuals whose names are both famous and forgotten. The designation of Blitar as the city of the proclamator is rooted primarily in this profound connection. Although Sukarno's political career extended across the entire nation, it is here that his earthly journey came to its conclusion. His presence continues to draw visitors from every province of Indonesia and from countries around the world. Yet one fascinating historical debate has surrounded Sukarno for decades. Where was he actually born? For many years, a widespread belief suggested that Sukarno was born in Blitar. The idea became deeply embedded within local traditions and popular understanding. It seemed natural. After all, his tomb was here. His family had strong connections to the region. Blitar embraced him as one of its own. However, many historians point toward historical records indicating that Sukarno was actually born in Surabaya on June 6, 1901. One of the most influential sources supporting this conclusion is the biography Bung Karno, an autobiography as told to Cindy Adams, in which Sukarno himself describes Surabaya as his birthplace. Additional historical research has reinforced this view through archival documentation and family records. Rather than diminishing Blitar's significance, this clarification reveals something even more meaningful. A person's legacy is not defined solely by where they begin life. It is also shaped by where their story continues to inspire others. Blitar became inseparable from Sukarno not because of the location of his birth, but because it became the guardian of his memory. The city serves as a bridge, connecting future generations with one of Indonesia's greatest leaders. Every visitor who walks through the memorial complex leaves with a deeper appreciation of the nation's journey. Many arrive knowing only Sukarno's name. They leave understanding the immense sacrifices, political challenges, and unwavering determination that transformed Indonesia from a colonized archipelago into an independent republic. Beyond the memorial itself, Sukarno's influence can be felt throughout Blitar. Roads, educational institutions, public spaces, and cultural events frequently reflect the city's deep respect for his legacy. His philosophy of nationalism, unity, and social justice remains part of local identity. For residents, this connection is not merely ceremonial, it is personal. Many families have passed down stories of Indonesia's independence through grandparents' design. Grandparents tell grandchildren about the difficult years before freedom. Teachers continue introducing students to the ideals that inspired the nation's founders. Community celebrations often emphasize gratitude for those who struggled to secure Indonesia's sovereignty. This living connection between history and everyday life gives Blitar a unique character. It is not simply preserving monuments, it is preserving memory. and memory has extraordinary power. A nation that remembers its history gains wisdom. A nation that forgets risks repeating its mistakes. Blitar reminds Indonesia of both triumph and sacrifice. It reminds every visitor that independence was never inevitable. It was earned through courage, unity, resilience, and an unshakable belief that a better future was possible. Perhaps that is why the city leaves such a lasting impression on those who visit. Its significance cannot be measured solely by population, economic size, or modern development. Its true importance lies in the stories it continues to protect, stories that transformed ordinary people into extraordinary heroes, stories that continue inspiring millions long after the final chapter of their lives has ended. Yet Blitar's remarkable identity extends beyond politics and history alone. It is also a city where nature, culture, heritage, and community come together, creating destinations that allow visitors not only to learn about Indonesia's past, but also to experience the beauty and spirit that continue defining Blitar in the present day. History may be what first brings people to Blitar, but it is rarely the only reason they leave with unforgettable memories. There is something remarkably different about this city. Unlike destinations where history is confined behind museum glass, Blitar allows visitors to experience the past as part of everyday life. Ancient traditions continue alongside modern routines. Historic landmarks stand only minutes away from lively neighborhoods. The stories of kings, freedom fighters, and founding fathers are woven naturally into the rhythm of the city itself. Every journey through Blitar becomes a journey across different chapters of Indonesia's history. One of the first places many visitors choose to explore is Istana Gebang, the childhood home closely associated with Sukarno and his family. Walking through its rooms offers a rare glimpse into the environment that helped shape one of Indonesia's greatest leaders. The house is surprisingly modest. There are no extravagant halls or luxurious decorations meant to impress visitors. Instead, what stands out is its simplicity. It reminds us that extraordinary leaders often emerge from ordinary beginnings. Within these walls, a young boy learned discipline, curiosity, and a love for his homeland. Long before he stood before thousands, delivering speeches that inspired an entire nation, he was simply a child, growing up with dreams that no one could yet imagine. That realization makes the house profoundly moving. It quietly reminds every visitor that greatness is never determined by where someone starts. Just a short distance away lies another place deeply connected to local identity. The site known as Petilasan Area Blitar honors the legendary figure believed in local tradition to have defended the region centuries earlier during the era of Majapahit. Whether viewed through the lens of history or folklore, the site represents something timeless. It celebrates courage, it celebrates loyalty, it celebrates the enduring belief that communities survive because ordinary people are willing to protect them during extraordinary times. For local residents, these stories are not distant myths. They are living traditions passed from one generation to the next, strengthening the bond between the present and the past. Another landmark that commands respect is the Supriyadi monument. Standing proudly in the city, the monument commemorates the young commander whose rebellion against Japanese occupation became one of the earliest military acts of resistance before Indonesian independence. Visitors often pause here in quiet reflection. Some photograph the monument, others simply stand silently, contemplating the extraordinary bravery of a man who knowingly challenged an empire despite overwhelming odds. His fate remains one of Indonesia's greatest historical mysteries. Yet perhaps that mystery only strengthens his legacy. Some heroes leave behind monuments, Others leave behind unanswered questions that continue inspiring future generations. Blitar preserves both. History is not the city's only treasure. Nature has been equally generous. One beloved destination is Kebon Rojo, a green urban park that offers residents and visitors a peaceful escape from the pace of daily life. Children laugh as they explore the gardens. Families gather beneath shaded trees. Friends sit together sharing stories as the afternoon slowly turns into evening. It may seem like an ordinary park, but places like this reveal another side of Blitar. A city is defined not only by the heroes it remembers, but also by the everyday lives of the people who call it home. The true spirit of a place is found in moments like these: parents watching their children play, neighbors greeting one another, students reading beneath old trees, life continuing peacefully because previous generations fought to make such ordinary moments possible. For those seeking relaxation, Sumber Udel Water Park has welcomed generations of visitors with its natural spring water and refreshing atmosphere. Long before modern recreational parks became common, local communities were already gathering around these clear waters. The springs symbolize another important characteristic of Blitar: renewal. Water has always represented life. After centuries of conflict, colonialism, natural disasters, and political transformation, Blitar continues renewing itself while remaining deeply connected to its roots. Another favorite gathering place is Pekut Park, a vibrant public space where culture, recreation, and community come together. As evening falls, lights illuminate the surroundings while families stroll through the open areas. Street vendors prepare traditional foods. Young musicians perform for passing crowds. Children chase one another with boundless energy. The atmosphere reflects the warmth for which Indonesian communities are widely admired. Visitors quickly discover that the greatest attraction is not always a monument or museum. Sometimes it is simply the people, the smiles offered by shopkeepers, the conversations shared over a cup of coffee, the generosity of strangers eager to explain local traditions. These human connections leave memories that no photograph can fully capture. Beyond the city centre, the surrounding region offers even more remarkable experiences. Rolling rice fields stretch toward the horizon, nourished by volcanic soil that has sustained communities for centuries. Traditional villages continue preserving local crafts and customs. Nearby hills reveal breathtaking views of East Java's lush landscapes. The changing seasons paint the countryside with different shades of green and gold, creating scenery that feels both peaceful and timeless. It becomes easy to understand why generations have chosen to build their lives here. The land itself seems to encourage resilience. Volcanic eruptions occasionally remind residents of nature's immense power. Yet, each time the land recovers, it becomes fertile once again. This cycle has shaped the character of the people: strength without arrogance, patience without surrender, optimism grounded in experience. Perhaps this is the greatest lesson Blitar offers every visitor. History is never only about the past. It is about understanding how yesterday shapes tomorrow. Every ancient legend teaches identity. Every monument teaches gratitude. Every historical building teaches perspective. Every smiling face reminds us that the greatest legacy of any city is its people. Blitar is not famous because it has the tallest skyscrapers. It is not celebrated because it possesses the largest population. Its greatness comes from something far more enduring. It has become a guardian of Indonesia's collective memory, a place where the courage of Majapahit warriors, the determination of Supriyadi, the vision of Sukarno, and the resilience of ordinary citizens all become part of one continuous story. And perhaps that is why Blitar deserves far greater recognition than it often receives. Because hidden within its peaceful streets is the remarkable story of a city that helped shape the soul of an entire nation. The Topover appear in history books, yet their contributions remain woven into the foundation of the nation itself. That is the quiet beauty of Blitar. It reminds us to look beyond the headlines, to appreciate the communities that shape history without demanding recognition, to understand that greatness often grows in places where humility remains a way of life. As Indonesia continues moving confidently into the future, cities like Blitar become even more valuable. Modern development is transforming the country at an extraordinary pace. New highways connect distant regions. Technology changes the way people communicate. Skylines continue rising higher every year. Economic opportunities expand across the archipelago. Progress is essential. Every nation must continue evolving. But progress without memory can become dangerous. A society that forgets its struggles may begin taking its freedoms for granted. A generation disconnected from its history may lose sight of the sacrifices that made its present possible. Blitar stands as a reminder that development and remembrance should always move forward together. The city demonstrates that preserving historical sites is not about living in the past. It is about giving future generations the wisdom to build a better tomorrow. Every child who visits the Bung Karno Museum gains a deeper understanding of leadership. Every student who learns about Supriyadi discovers the meaning of courage. Every traveller who hears the legend of Arya Blitar begins appreciating the importance of cultural heritage. These lessons cannot be measured in economic statistics, yet they are among the most valuable investments any nation can make. Because nations are strengthened not only by infrastructure, but also by identity, not only by technology, but also by values, not only by wealth, but also by shared purpose. Blitar quietly nurtures all of these. Perhaps that is why visitors often leave with something they did not expect. They arrive searching for historical landmarks. They leave carrying inspiration. They arrive curious about a city. They leave reflecting on an entire nation's journey. That is the power of places where history still breathes. They change not only what we know, they change how we see the world. So if you ever find yourself travelling through East Java, take the time to stop in Blitar. Walk slowly through its streets. Listen carefully to the stories shared by local residents. Stand before the resting place of Bung Karno and reflect on the price of freedom. Visit the monument honouring Supriyadi and remember that courage is often born in the darkest moments. Explore the city's museums, parks and historical sites with curiosity rather than haste, because every corner of Blitar has something to teach, not just about Indonesia, but about humanity itself, about resilience in the face of hardship, about hope during uncertainty, about remembering those who came before us, about building a future worthy of their sacrifices. In a world increasingly obsessed with what is new, Blitar reminds us of the timeless value of what should never be forgotten. Its monuments will continue standing. Its stories will continue being told. Its history will continue inspiring generations yet to come. And perhaps one day, when someone asks you about the most unforgettable places in Indonesia, your answer will not begin with a famous beach or a towering volcano. Perhaps it will begin with a quiet city in East Java, a city where legends met history, where courage challenged empires, where the father of a nation found his final resting place. A city that proves greatness does not always announce itself with noise. Sometimes it waits patiently for those willing to listen. Because Blitar is more than a destination. It is a living reminder that the soul of a nation is preserved not only in its capitals or its monuments, but in the places where its people chose to dream, to struggle, and to believe that freedom was worth every sacrifice. And as long as those stories continue to be remembered, the spirit of Blitar will never fade. It will continue inspiring Indonesia. It will continue inspiring the world, one generation after another. And perhaps that is the greatest reason why Blitar deserves to be experienced rather than simply studied. Books can tell us dates, museums can preserve artifacts, documents can record political events, but only by walking through the city itself can you truly feel how deeply history is woven into everyday life. You begin to notice the details, the elderly man sitting outside his home, smiling as he watches children ride their bicycles through the neighborhood. The call to prayer echoing across the city as the afternoon sun slowly begins to set. The scent of traditional food drifting from small family-owned restaurants that have served generations of loyal customers. The quiet conversations in local markets where merchants greet customers by name instead of treating them as strangers. These moments may seem ordinary, yet they reveal something extraordinary. They show a community that has preserved its humanity despite centuries of upheaval. Throughout history, Blitar has witnessed kingdoms rise. It has seen colonial powers arrive. It has endured occupation during war. It has celebrated the birth of a nation. It has mourned the passing of heroes. And through every chapter, life continued. Children continued laughing. Families continued gathering. Farmers continued planting rice beneath the same sky. The city never allowed hardship to define its future. That resilience reflects something much larger than Blitar itself. It reflects the character of Indonesia, an archipelago stretching across more than 17,000 islands, a nation home to hundreds of ethnic groups, hundreds of local languages, countless traditions passed down through generations. Despite its immense diversity, Indonesia has remained united through a shared belief expressed in its national motto, unity in diversity. Blitar embodies that principle. Its history combines ancient Javanese legends, Hindu and Buddhist influences, Islamic traditions, colonial architecture, nationalist movements, and modern Indonesian identity into one continuous narrative. Rather than replacing one another, these layers of history coexist. Each generation adds another chapter without erasing those that came before. That is one reason historians find places like Blitar so fascinating. It serves as a living archive. Every historical site represents a different era,